What would you do if one day, while walking down the street, you heard a faint cry and discovered a baby abandoned in the trash? For most of us, the thought alone is unbearable. But for one poor woman, this nightmare became reality. She was not wealthy, she was not powerful, and she had nothing more than a kind heart to guide her. Yet the decision she made on that day shocked her entire community and changed her life forever. It was an ordinary morning, the kind of day she had lived 100 times before. A long walk to work, tired steps on dusty roads, and a heart heavy with worries of how to make it through. Nothing about this day seemed different. Nothing gave any sign that her life was about to be rewritten in ways she could never imagine. But fate often hides in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the greatest tests arrive when we are least prepared. That woman's choice would not only challenge her strength, but also reveal truths buried deep within her community. Truths that would leave everyone speechless. In this video, you will hear her story. You will see how one moment of compassion can ripple into a lifetime of transformation. You will learn why her act of love went far beyond herself, and why her story continues to inspire people even today. Stay with us until the end, because what happened next will truly move you. And if you are new here, welcome to Pure African Tales, where real stories of love, struggle, and courage come alive. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and join us as we uncover yet another tale that will touch your heart. Her life had never been easy. Each morning began before sunrise, with a body already tired and a heart already heavy. She worked wherever she could, cleaning houses, carrying water, selling vegetables in the market. Whatever job offered a few coins, she took it. Her home was small, barely enough to shield her from the rain. Some nights, she went to bed hungry, whispering to herself that tomorrow might be better. But tomorrow often looked just like yesterday. Poverty was not just her condition, it was the air she breathed. Still, she was not bitter. Neighbors knew her as the woman who would share her last piece of bread with a hungry child. They saw how she carried the burdens of others, even while her own shoulders bent under the weight. Kindness was her only wealth, and she gave it freely. Yet deep inside, there was a quiet ache she never spoke about. Years ago, she had dreamed of being a mother. She imagined small hands reaching for her, little voices calling her name. But life had been cruel, denying her the one thing her heart desired most. She carried that emptiness in silence, wearing a smile so the world would never know. Her days continued in this rhythm: work, struggle, survival. A woman unseen by most, unnoticed in the crowd. No one could have guessed that destiny was watching, preparing to place in her hands a test so great it would shake her entire world. It was early morning, the sun barely rising, when she set out for another day of work. The streets were still quiet, filled with the smell of damp earth after the night air. She carried her old bag, her mind already busy with thoughts of how to stretch the little money she had left. As she passed by a row of trash bins near the edge of the market, a faint sound reached her ears. At first she ignored it, a soft cry, weak and uneven. She paused, listening carefully. It came again. A thin, high-pitched sound that trembled through the stillness of the morning. Her first thought was simple. Perhaps it was a cat trapped among the waste. She stepped closer, peering into the shadows. But as she pushed aside a torn sack and bent lower, her breath caught in her throat. Lying inside, wrapped in nothing but a dirty piece of cloth, was a tiny baby. She froze. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Her eyes widened, her heart pounding so loudly it felt as though the whole street could hear it. Disbelief washed over her. This couldn't be real. She blinked, rubbed her eyes. But the truth lay there before her. A newborn child, so small, so fragile, abandoned among the trash. Her hands trembled as she reached down, then pulled back in fear. Thoughts raced through her mind. Who would do this? Why here? Why this way? Questions with no answers. She looked around, hoping someone would appear, that this was all a mistake. But the street was empty. No footsteps, no voices. Only her and the sound of the baby's weak cry. Compassion battled with fear inside her. She thought of her own struggles, barely feeding herself, barely surviving. How could she care for a baby when she had nothing to give? And yet, as the infant's tiny fingers moved, as the soft cry rose again, her heart ached. Slowly, almost against her will, she reached down and lifted the child into her arms. The baby was light, fragile, and warm against her chest. She held it close, unsure of what to do next. In that instant, a storm of emotions surged through her. Fear of the unknown, anger at whoever had done this, but above all, an overwhelming wave of compassion. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. She could not simply walk away. For a long moment, she stood frozen, the baby pressed against her chest. Fear whispered in her mind, "You can't do this. You can't even feed yourself. How will you feed a child?" She looked down at the baby's tiny face, eyes still closed, lips trembling as it let out another weak cry. That sound pierced through her heart like nothing she had ever felt before. She glanced back at the trash pile, the place where the child had been left, as if the thought of putting it back there could somehow erase the weight of the choice before her. Her feet wavered, her hands shook. She whispered to herself, "Maybe someone else will come. Maybe someone stronger, someone richer, someone who can give this child more than I ever could." She turned slightly, as though to leave the baby where she had found it. But then, the cry came again, this time louder, more desperate, more pleading. She felt her chest tighten, tears stinging her eyes. In that sound, she heard not just need, but a plea for life, for love, for a chance. And she knew, if she walked away now, she would never forgive herself. So she pulled the baby closer and began to walk, step after step, each one heavier than the last. With every movement, the reality of what she had done grew larger. She had no milk, no cradle, no warm clothes to cover the child, only her arms, her heart, and a spirit that refused to let go. When she reached her small home, she laid the baby on her bed. The tiny space that had always felt empty now seemed too small for the enormity of this new responsibility. She stared at the child, panic rising in her chest. She searched her cupboards. There was nothing. No food, no milk, nothing suitable for a newborn. That night was the longest she had ever lived. The baby cried, and she held it against her, whispering soft words of comfort. She rocked back and forth, singing lullabies she thought she had forgotten. Her body was exhausted, her stomach empty, but she would not let the child go. In those hours of sleeplessness and fear, her world changed completely. She was no longer just a poor woman fighting for her own survival. She was now a mother in every way that mattered, responsible for a fragile life that depended on her strength. And though she had nothing, she promised herself one thing. She would not let this baby suffer the way she had. By the next morning, the story had already spread. Whispers moved faster than the wind through the narrow streets. Neighbors gathered at doorways, their voices low but sharp. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others raised their brows in curiosity. "She has taken in a baby," one woman said, her tone laced with judgment. "A baby from the trash, can you imagine?" another replied, half in awe, half in doubt. "It is madness." She can't even buy enough food for herself. How will she feed a child? Everywhere she walked, eyes followed her. Some looked with pity, some with disapproval. Children pointed, whispering behind their hands. And yet, there were a few who quietly admired her courage, though they said nothing aloud. When neighbors confronted her directly, the words were not kind. "You are foolish," one man told her. "This is not your problem. You could have left the baby at the police station or the hospital. Why bring such a burden into your home?" She listened, but did not answer. Deep down, she knew their questions were not entirely wrong. She had nothing. No steady income, no support, no savings. Even her daily bread came with struggle. And now she had another mouth to feed, one that could not even speak for itself. But when she returned home, and the baby's small hands reached for her, all those doubts melted. The bond between them grew stronger with every passing hour. The child had been left with nothing, just as she had been left by life with nothing. Perhaps that was why she felt such a fierce connection, because they were both abandoned in their own ways. Nights were the hardest. When hunger gnawed at her stomach, she would press the last piece of bread to the baby's lips instead of her own. She sold what little she had to buy milk, often going to bed with only water for herself. In the silence of the night, as the baby slept in her arms, tears would slip down her face. Not tears of regret, but of exhaustion, of sacrifice, and of a love she never. Her clothes looser, yet her determination only grew stronger. No matter what the neighbors said, no matter what the world thought, she had made her choice. And she would not abandon the child, because in her heart, she knew she had been chosen to save it. Days turned into weeks, and the cries of the baby became part of her daily life. But outside her small home, whispers began to grow louder. The town could not stop talking about the child. Who would leave a newborn in the trash? Some asked, their voices sharp with disgust. Others leaned in closer, lowering their tones, their words heavy with suspicion. One rumor suggested the baby belonged to a young servant girl, too afraid to admit what had happened. Another whispered story spoke of a wealthy family in the city, desperate to hide a scandal from the public eye. The details shifted with every retelling, but one thing was clear. The baby was no ordinary orphan. The woman heard these rumors whenever she went to the market. People spoke as if she were not standing there, as if she had no right to protect the child she now held so close. But deep inside, their words began to take root. She too wondered, who could have left this baby? Why here? Why like this? Late at night, as she rocked the child to sleep, questions haunted her mind. The baby's features, delicate, refined, did not look like the children she saw every day in her village. There was something different, something she couldn't quite explain. One afternoon, an old neighbor pulled her aside and whispered, "Be careful. This child is not ordinary. Mark my words, there is a story behind those eyes." Her heart pounded at those words. She tried to push the thought away, but suspicion gnawed at her. Each day, the child's mysterious origin became harder to ignore. Was she raising the child of a poor girl who had no choice, or of a powerful family willing to throw away their own blood to keep their secrets safe? The truth remained hidden, but the mystery only deepened. And with every passing day, she realized her life was now entangled in a story much larger than her own. Life became harder than ever before. Caring for herself had once been difficult enough, but now, with the baby in her arms, every day felt like climbing a mountain. To buy milk, she worked extra hours. She swept streets in the morning, washed laundry for neighbors in the afternoon, and sold fruits at the market when evening came. Her hands cracked from soap and water, her back bent from carrying loads. Yet she kept moving. There was no choice. Each coin meant food. Each job meant survival for the child. At night, exhaustion pulled at her body like heavy chains. She would sit by the dim light of a lantern, rocking the baby in her arms, eyes half closed, head nodding from lack of sleep. Some nights she wanted to collapse and never get up again. But then the baby would stir, opening its tiny eyes, looking at her as though she was the whole world. And suddenly, she found strength again. Neighbors watched her with mixed feelings. Some whispered, "She is killing herself for that child." Others shook their heads, wondering how long she could keep going. But inside her heart, she had already decided she would endure anything. Hunger, exhaustion, even scorn from others. Nothing mattered as much as this small life depending on her. The child began to grow, little by little. Its cries grew stronger. Its small hands clutched at her clothes with more force, and with each milestone, the first smile, the first time it turned its head toward her voice, her love deepened. She had once thought she was saving the baby, but now she realized something more powerful. The baby was saving her too, giving her a reason to rise each morning, giving her courage to face another day of struggle. And so, even as her burdens multiplied, so did her strength. Because love, once it takes root, has a way of making even the hardest road worth walking. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. She was returning from the market, the baby tied to her back with a faded cloth, when whispers began to ripple through the street. People pointed, their voices hushed but urgent. She felt their eyes follow her every step, though she did not yet know why. By evening, the truth began to surface. The child she had been raising with her sweat and tears did not come from poverty, nor from some nameless stranger. The baby, people said, belonged to one of the most powerful families in the region. The story spread quickly. A wealthy man's household had been hiding a scandal, a child born in secret, hidden away to protect reputation and pride. And when the family could not risk the truth escaping, the newborn had been thrown aside, abandoned, left to die in the shadows and trash. At first, disbelief. Then anger. Could it really be true? She looked down at the child in her arms, no longer just an innocent baby, but suddenly the heir to wealth and power she could never imagine. The news reached every corner of the town. Some gasped in admiration. "She has been raising the child of the rich." Others shook their heads in pity. "They will come for it. She cannot keep the baby. It does not belong to her." And soon enough, the family did come. A car rolled through the dusty road, its polished frame shining like something from another world. Well-dressed men stepped out, their eyes cold, their words sharp. They demanded the child back, not with gratitude, but with authority. In that moment, her whole body trembled. The baby clung to her clothing, unaware of the storm around it. She felt fear. Fear of losing the only joy she had known in years. Fear of being powerless against the weight of money and influence. The street filled with neighbors, silent but watching. The community held its breath. Everyone knew this was no longer just a story about survival. This was a battle between wealth and poverty, between love and pride. Would she hand the baby over and walk away empty-handed? Or would she dare to fight for the child who had become her whole world? The answer lingered in the air, heavy and uncertain. The air was heavy as the wealthy family's men stood at her door. Their suits gleamed. Their words carried the weight of power. One of them spoke firmly. "You've done enough. Hand the child over. We will take care of it from here." Her arms tightened around the baby instinctively, as if her embrace alone could shield it from the world. The men placed an envelope on the table, thick, filled with money she had never seen in her life. Enough to change her circumstances forever. Enough to end her hunger, her struggles, her endless nights of sacrifice. For a moment, her eyes lingered on it. Her body trembled with the weight of temptation. With that money, she could eat well, sleep peacefully, live without the constant fear of tomorrow. But then, she felt the warmth of the baby against her chest. She looked down at its innocent face, eyes still trusting, lips curled in the hint of a smile. Tears burned in her eyes. This child is not just a responsibility, she thought. It is my heart, my family, my reason to keep living. The men grew impatient. Take the money. This is not your fight. You cannot give the child what we can. It belongs to us. Their words cut deep, twisting her inside. Logic told her they were right. She had nothing but her love to give. And yet, wasn't that more than they ever had? Her mind battled itself. Keep the child, and she risked everything. Her safety, her survival, her future. Let the child go, and she would live with comfort, but an emptiness that no wealth could ever fill. As the baby stirred in her arms, letting out a soft cry, her tears finally fell. She whispered to herself, "How do I let go of the only thing that ever made me feel whole?" The neighbors stood in silence outside, watching from a distance. They could see her shaking, torn between two worlds, one of love and one of survival. The decision weighed heavier than any burden she had ever carried. Her heart screamed one answer, while her circumstances whispered another. And in that moment, she realized, whatever choice she made, her life would never be the same again. As the dust settled and the voices of the crowd faded, she held the child close, her heart heavy but full. Looking back on the journey, she whispered softly, "Finding this baby gave me more than I ever had: purpose, love, and courage." For her, the child was never just an abandoned soul. It was a second chance at life, a reminder that even in the darkest places, like a trash heap, something pure, innocent, and beautiful could still be found. Her story carried a message that echoed beyond her small home. True motherhood, true parenthood, is not only about giving birth. It is about giving love. It is about sacrifice, patience, and the courage to choose another's life above your own comfort. And that is why her decision will be remembered. Not because it was easy, but because it was rooted in love. So, if this story touched your heart, let it also remind you: kindness can turn strangers into family, and love can rewrite even the harshest of fates. Thank you for watching Pure African Tales. If you believe in the power of love and courage, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that reveal the strength of the human heart.